Okay, welcome back to Hindustan Astrology. I'm Katya, and I have another episode of Interviews with the Gurus with Dr. Santhip Kanholy. Thank you so much for joining me again. And today's video, we're going to discuss the moon nodes shift next month into different signs. So currently, Rahu's in Gemini, and it will go back into Taurus. And Ketu is in Sagittarius, and it will go back into Scorpio. So this is an 18.5-month cycle, and the nodes return to the same sign every 18.5 years. So basically, Rahu and Ketu are our destiny. Rahu brings you into this life, Ketu takes you out. Rahu is the material ego that just consumes and consumes and doesn't know when he's full because he doesn't have a stomach, because he's just the head of the serpent. And then Ketu is the body of the serpent without the head. And so he is our spiritual ego, and he gives without thinking because he doesn't have a head. He has blind faith because he doesn't have any eyes, but he can lose his head with rage because he doesn't have a head. So this can be like a religious fanatic kind of phenomenon. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started on the presentation. And we're just going to show you guys, what's going on, what we think is probably going to be happening over the next 18.5 months, looking into the past, like what's happened historically, and seeing a pattern in that. So what to expect from Rahu in Taurus and Ketu in Scorpio. And you can see here's the glyph up here for Taurus. Here's the glyph for Scorpio. This is the bull, this is the scorpion. So Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Rahu will transit to Taurus, an earthy and fixed sign of material wealth. Taurus signifies the things we value in life: family, money, speech, and material assets. Being ruled by the bull, Taurus is the storehouse of procreative energy. Rahu, which is all about extravagance, material wealth, and mass communication, complements Taurus's qualities. Even though it is debated, some ancient texts say that Rahu gets exalted in the sign of Taurus. Now, Santhip, I've always thought of Rahu exalted in Gemini.
Yeah, it's right. What I began to realize is that different ancient texts have different historical regions. They emerge in different historical regions. So, like the text which were, let's say, coming from a trader kind of cultural background, so which is like Gemini kind of thing. They met foreigners there, which was Rahu is in Gemini. So for them, Rahu being exalted in Gemini made more sense. Then you go to farmland region, the more inland and so forth. Now we are actually dealing with farm and so forth. Now for them, foreigners came when Taurus was strong and so forth, so like when to the farmland to buy stuff and so forth. So what I'm beginning to think is that perhaps the cultural kind of background of region is also seeping into planet's exaltation and debilitation, because that was what was actually being observed by the actual author based on his society where he was at. Could be so, okay. But I do think Rahu definitely. Now, what is good is that there are some cultures, there are some astrological traditions where they don't believe Rahu or Ketu gets exalted or debilitated also. So you have the entire spectrum, So what I've seen, like I said, different kind of locality giving different kind of astrological pointers there. Yeah.
Right. So Rahu and Taurus also feel stable and can give wealth and material comforts as the earthy Taurus can support it. So Ketu and Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Mars. When Rahu is in Taurus, Ketu will be in Scorpio, a watery and fixed sign of secrets, mysteries, and transformation. Scorpio is related to the hidden aspects of life, occult sciences, and transformation. And transmutation, I would say, because those are two different concepts. Ketu is all about deep understanding, the true essence of your higher self, and embracing spiritual wealth. Ketu in Scorpio has the potency to get exalted and feels comfortable revealing spiritual secrets and understanding the deeper meaning behind spiritual practices. This transit of Ketu in Scorpio helps make use of knowledge acquired through the years to transform your life better. The poison of the Scorpion with the poisonous aspect of Ketu can indicate medical breakthroughs as well. So we're going to see these Venus and Mars themes, wealth and, sports, as well as medicine, and as well as war, being played out through these times when the nodes were in these signs. So for the next 18 and a half months, these are when they'll be in the nakshatras. So Rahu and Taurus, and they don't always coincide at the exact same dates because they're opposite and they're just off a little bit. Like you'll notice, Mrigashira.
Yeah, I think that's a true node versus mean node kind of thing, right?
What's that?
You said there's a true node transit dates, right?
Yes, this is the true node. And so basically there's a 2-week interval between the true node and the mean node. So I've used the true node here. So if you just go forward 2 weeks, that would be the mean node. And really they're both significant. I set my software to true node for doing, people's charts. But when you're dealing with Rahu and Ketu switching signs, you have to pay attention to both the true and the mean node time and the 2 weeks in between, because what I found is that the true node kind of kicks off whatever event that's transpiring, and then the culmination or the manifestation of that event is the mean node. So they're both significant. But when you're setting your software, you have to pick one or the other. And so I've just found that true node works better with transits when I'm working with people's charts. So that's why I use that, but they're both important. So Rahu in Mrigashira, September 19th, 2020 to February 12th, 2021. Rohini Nakshatra, February 12th to September 19th of 2021. And Kritika Nakshatra, September 19th, 2021 to March 16th of 2022. Now, I've just used the Taurus side of Kritika. I didn't include the whole nakshatra of when it goes into Aries. So basically, Rahu will go into Aries on March 16th of 2022. So Ketu in Scorpio, Jyeshtha Nakshatra, September 19th, 2020 to March 9th, 2021. Anuradha Nakshatra, March 9th, 2021 to February 14th, 2022. And these two are the longest time for them to stay in the nakshatra because of overlap. And then Vishaka, just a month, February 14th to March 16th, 2022 on the Scorpio side of Vishaka. And then it enters Libra and goes into the Libra side. Now, the general themes for the 20th and 21st centuries, when they're in these signs, are rebuild, renew, and recharge. And so what's coming up is we will be in a post-COVID-19 pandemic world. And also what's happened, it's happening now on, just a month before the node change, but the first Black and Asian female Democratic U.S. presidential VP candidate. That's significant because down here we see a repeat, but the last time the nodes were in these signs was 2012 to 2003, and this was post 9/11. And so basically when Rahu was in Ardra last time and in this time is when we experienced a major crisis, tragic crisis. And then 1983 to 1985, this time period and this time period were the only ones where it wasn't a post something, right? So at this time we had US President Ronald Reagan. We still had the Cold War going on, but here we have Geraldine Ferraro, who was the first Democratic U.S. presidential VP candidate. So both of these times had a woman, and notice, Rahu's in Venus's sign. I think that's very significant. 1964 to 1966, it was post-death of President Kennedy. He died in 1963. So again, recovery. 1947 to 1949, post-World War II. And then 1927 to 1929, we had the Great Depression, which wasn't post anything, but after that we had a post period. But, this was a time of, great tragedy for many people. And, really, Ronald Reagan, I guess you could say, because I remember in 1981 when people were struggling, they didn't want to call it, I think they called it a recession at the time. They didn't call it a depression. So in a way, this time period could have been a post-recession. But this, Great Depression talks about money, and that's very Taurus. And then 1909 to 1910 was post-World War I. So I feel like, this whole time was, just all about recovery. And these are some of the themes we're going to see coming up.
Yeah, I can just add on to that quickly on this one, like what you mentioned about rebuild, renewal, and it's kind of important to recognize. We've been through that before with the post 9/11, for instance. 9/11 happened. There were a lot of measures put in place, a lot of controversial kind of security measures put in place in airports and stuff like that around that time. And then eventually, the whole industry kind of came back, right? So same thing is what is also happening right now, that it's a post-pandemic kind of thing. Perhaps there might be security kind of thing that could play out, and so forth, especially with the post-pandemic. The leadership kind of thing is very important. That's as you mentioned, the female kind of thing with the Venus kind of thing coming forth also. So definitely that is also very important kind of a theme. And then what is also interesting about the Great Depression is, that was hard time, but Great Depression was extremely hard time financially. So usually, we in this time and age, it could be different, but because just to add on to it, when we look at the other charts in the future slides, we kind of get more clue as to why we might not be in the depression, but perhaps we might be actually in a great boom, economic boom that
Right.
could play out also with Jupiter aspect and so forth. Yeah, that's one thing.
But I realized I made a mistake here. World War I was 1914 to 1918. So this would be pre-World War I. This would be things leading up to World War I. Sorry about that, guys. I did make a mistake there. I wanted to make sure and clarify that while we're talking about it on this slide.
That's good. Yeah. Now, very important thing also is that post-World War II also, once the destruction was over, then you still had to rebuild the whole society, rebuild the farm, all that. Now, I do think you might actually begin to see a big change in the food distribution kind of thing. Like that kind of thing can play out. Good change in the farmers kind of thing. Like what played out with around post-World War II, and so for the entire economy had to be rebuilt in many ways. So world economy had to be rebuilt. So that's also the other challenge that could play out. But yeah, the post-death of President Kennedy is a very interesting point because it's definitely he was a very significant leader and so forth also. So it'll be interesting to see also here. But over to you now, Katya. I just want to add those quick comments on those things.
Yeah, and also I think if I remember, I'm looking it up. The Dust Bowl. Okay, the period was 1930 to 1936. So that would have been after. Okay. Well, I'm going to have to do some more research on 1909 to 1910. Because there must have been something that happened right before then, 1907, 1908.
Yeah. From what I remember, it's something around Russia, something like that. Around the kings of Russia and so forth. From whatever history I remember,
Do you remember when the Russian royal family was shot?
I think it's 1907, if I'm not mistaken.
There we go. Then that's what it is. That's what this is.
Yeah, it could be like very significant communist kind of a thing going on with
It
respect to
would
Russian.
be, post Romanov period.
Yeah, something like that.
Russia
That's
recovering and the Bolsheviks taking over and all of that. So that's what that would have been. So I'm glad we clarified that now. So I just want to take a look specifically at the last time Rahu and Ketu were in these signs, because it was right after 9/11, and we could very clearly see the themes of Venus and Mars, of money, money, and also racial issues, because Taurus has to do with family. And then for Scorpio, there's on the Mars side, there's a lot of war, bombings, sports, and also medical breakthroughs as well. And so we see 2002, we had US Airways bankruptcy, and this is while the airline had financial issues prior to the September 11th terror attacks. It had been disproportionately impacted as it had a large presence at the major airports in the DC area. So it was, once the nodes shifted, then they went into bankruptcy. So it's, Taurus, Venus, Winter Olympics. And again, we have a first. It also marked the first time that a Black athlete won a gold medal at the Winter Games, with Vanetta Flowers from the USA in women's bobsleigh, and the first Black male athlete won a winter gold with Jerome Iginla from Canada in the men's ice hockey. So very Mars and Taurus together. And then the euro. The European Union makes the euro the official currency of 12 of the European Union's members. Very Venus. And then the European Union votes to add 10 new countries. Very Taurus. Mount Nyiragongo volcano erupts. The Democratic Republic of the Congo displaces an estimated 400,000 people. Very Mars. And then Kmart Corporation files bankruptcy as well. It becomes the largest retailer in American history to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. That was just the beginning of, Kmart's decline. And then 2003, Jimmy Carter receives Nobel Prize. Carter was given the prize for dedicating his life promoting peace and democracy and working to advance human rights and social issues. Carter's greatest achievement came in 1978 during his presidency, when he brokered a peace deal between Egypt and Israel. But the majority of his work came after he left office. And then, what just happened? What did Trump just do? He just, brokered a deal between Israel and the UAE, So I feel like that's a foreshadowing of what's to come for us as well. We'll see more of that. And again, peace, Venus, very Taurus. And then there's several bombings that happened in 2003. Terrorists detonate massive bombs in 2 nightclubs in Kuta, Bali, killing 202 and injuring over 300. Mobs of Muslims burn the Sabarmati Express train, killing 57 Hindu pilgrims in India. The Basque terrorist organization, ETA, continues its bombing campaign in support of its aim for self-determination for the Basque country. So all of those bombings, it's very Mars, more Mars with death. Restrictions are further loosened for mercy killings and assisted suicide for patients with unbearable terminal illness in the Netherlands. And I would see that as kind of a combination of Mars and Venus, the mercy of Venus with the death of Mars. And then the Department of Homeland Security, George Bush creates on June 7th to fight threats of terrorism. So Homeland, Taurus, terrorism, Mars, we get to see all this playing out during that time. And then further on I'm sorry, do you want to say something?
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Katya.
So further in continued 2003 events, we have Human Genome Project is completed during April. Scientists from around the world successfully finished sequencing about 99% of the human genome. Well, that's very Ketu in Scorpio, because that's all about medical breakthroughs, right? And then we have the Space Shuttle Columbia disaster. The Space Shuttle Columbia disaster takes place on February 1st. NASA's STS-107 mission carried 7 crew members: Rick Husband, William McCool, David Brown, Kalpana Chawla, Michael Anderson, Laurel Clark, and I think that's to say Ian Ramon, into space, where they conducted scientific experiments for 16 days. The Columbia disintegrated upon re-entry, tragically killing all on board. So that's all about Mars, especially Ketu, you know, the most spiritual planet, wanting to have breakthroughs. I mean, that just shows all of that together. And then on the Mars side, Ronaldo's Manchester United debut. The Portuguese soccer sensation Cristiano Ronaldo made his Premier League debut for Manchester United during August at the age of 18. Then we have a combination of Mars and Venus with the final Concorde flight, because flight, you know, indicating Mars, you know, because it's transportation, but it was luxury. It was the Concorde, so it was Venus. And this flight took place during November of 2003. The Concorde was a supersonic, high-end passenger jet that flew at twice the speed of sound. The first Concorde flight took place in 1969, and regular flights began in 1976, which that blew my mind when they stopped it in 2003. Because I grew up with the Concorde. I mean, I've never been on it, but, you know, to me, it became commonplace. And then all of a sudden, this luxury thing was disappearing, and it was kind of a shock. Then, of course, we have more Mars with the Iraq invasion. The United States plans for an invasion of Iraq due to an imminent threat from weapons of mass destruction, or so we thought at the time. The United States and the United Kingdom start with their shock and awe campaign with massive airstrikes on military targets in Baghdad before the invasion of Iraq by land forces. Saddam Hussein, former president of Iraq, is captured in Tikrit by the U.S. 4th Infantry Division. And then more, California politics. I thought this is kind of a combination of the two as well. Voters recall Democrat Governor Gray Davis from office and elect Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger to succeed him. So we'll see in 1983, that's when he gets his citizenship. So there's definitely, you know, Schwarzenegger definitely has some important points in Taurus and Scorpio in his chart for these things to happen, you know, during these nodal shifts. And then just to look at, oh, I'm sorry, you want to say something?
Yeah, just go back to the previous slide, Katya, just quickly if you can. I just want to highlight some simple things.
Yeah.
Now that we are actually talking about the previous decade kind of thing, right? So, like, what is interesting is that, I think this is the next slide. This is the decade before that, before nodal return. Now, what is interesting is that now very important thing which you mentioned here is the European Union and establishment of Euro, in my opinion. So I think that's a very important thing, in my opinion, because you have a new history being made, you know, economically, in which a new currency that is uniting multiple countries came forth, which is the euro. You know, I do think something similar could actually happen during this time frame as well, because of the probably could be something based on cryptocurrency, something like that, you know, which should be a Mars theme as well. Now, I do think that there could be some big changes in European Union potentially, perhaps new addition, could be transformation with regard to European Union also because of that, because of the specific event.
Well,
now,
look at what's happening with Brexit. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? You know, they're leaving. So it was formed, you know, getting strong at this time, but now 18 and a half years later, it's starting to collapse.
Yeah, well, there can be some challenges there for the European Union. Now, there are actual economic kind of questions about Euro, and many countries are questioning its validity, all that, you know, like around the pandemic, which kind of triggered a lot of difference in response amongst the countries and so forth. So that's a very interesting thing that you mentioned that. So I think that Europe and European Union could be having very significant transmission. That's the first thing I can say. Now the volcano eruption is also very important kind of a thing, because there's an unexpected accidents that happen, especially around, which is a Martian theme which you mentioned. Some of the retailers can definitely have a challenging time right now. So like exactly with Kmart kind of thing, there could be other kind of retailers that could go for bankruptcy, like what you said. History can be made in, racial history can be made in the Olympics. That's the way I would frame that also. Again, you can expect the upcoming Olympics, which can be very interesting in that regard. US Airways bankruptcy, that's going to, some of the airlines can have a challenging time in the future and so forth. That's something definitely you can say that, based on what you shared there. The other thing is that the peace effort, which you mentioned, is also very important. I do think some kind of peace efforts. Now, here the peace deal happened between Egypt and Israel. Now, the thing I would assume is that perhaps there could be a question between the peace with regard to Egypt and Israel during this time period. Just like how European Union is having a challenging time now, perhaps now the Egyptian Israel, there could be something significant that is questioning the peace and so forth. The bombings is definitely true with Mars and so forth, a lot of death, unexpected death and so forth. That's definitely a challenging thing. So unexpected kind of terror events and so forth that can definitely play out. That's a cause for concern as well. Now, the homeland security is a pure Scorpio kind of thing. That's the point which I want to share. The security is connected with Scorpio. So, definitely you can expect security kind of a thing coming forth and so forth. A lot of transformation with regard to security in general. That's one of the things I just want to highlight, that's one thing.
Great,
now,
thank you.
Moving to the next slide. The death thing also, I do think there can be some transformation with regard to death and what you mentioned, right? Perhaps what I think is that perhaps there might be something around mercy killing, as you said, could be something around, I do think the longevity kind of thing can play out very strongly. Like there are some people who are trying to preserve their body, stuff like that, preserve their brain and all that, right? That kind of thing. So, which is bringing the Human Genome Project as a very interesting thing, because this can actually be some fulfillment of long-term biological projects. I do think new discoveries with regard to genetics can come forth, which is purely that. Again, the space shuttle of Columbia is a very interesting kind of a thing, because I do think the space industry would also have some transformation. In my opinion, that can also actually happen.
Look at SpaceX when Elon Musk,
Exactly.
Now we're taking citizens into space.
Right. Now, the other thing is actually, the Ronaldo's thing is very, very interesting. Some very great athletes will be coming forth right now. That's the other way to think about it. Some very new athletes, exceptional athletes will be coming forth right now when Ketu is going into Scorpio. Very karmic athletes defining a generation. That kind of thing can actually play out.
Right.
It's a very interesting thing to look forward to. Definitely no doubt about that. The Concorde flight, which you said, is also this luxury kind of transformation is also an important aspect also. Perhaps right now the private jet kind of industry could be facing trouble and so forth because of the pandemic. That's a transformation there. Now, the very important aspect here also is Iraq invasion and so forth. So it's like there was a karma of war. Weapons of mass destruction was a key word that was used to trigger the war also. So it's one of those things that can be that particular land, Iraq land, could actually have again transformation right now. Perhaps there could be a withdrawal of forces completely. That kind of thing could play out really. The California politics, which you shared, is also very interesting. You should go forward to share the why Arnold Schwarzenegger was important, and then I could probably comment on that.
Okay, yeah. Well, and 18 and a half years later, Iraq is still a mess. But now what we have going on in the Middle East is what's happened in Lebanon. And they're going through a time that, Lebanon's a very, very small country. 4 million people, right? 1 million people have been out of work during the pandemic. And then this explosion happened. So the kind of devastation that happened to Iraq is really on the same scale with Lebanon because it's so small. And, you know, I've had a lot of Iraqi friends say, oh, you know, please help my Lebanese brothers and sisters because we understand what they're going through, is what I keep hearing, you know. So I think during this time, we're going to see, I mean, already, you know, a lot of foreign countries are trying to help Lebanon or help Lebanon, you know. So we could see some kind of an invasion of them, you know, during this next 18 and a half months, whether financially or on the ground. So my heart goes out to the Lebanese people. I can't imagine what they're going through. So 1983, these were some events that I thought were pretty cool. So it was August 11th to, February 4th, 1985. So August 11th, 1983 to February 4th, 1985 is when the nodes were in these signs. And I thought this was cool. January 1st, New Age music radio program, Hearts of Space, makes its national syndication debut on U.S. National Public Radio. That was huge at that time. I remember 1983, and I remember the music that was out. And hearing that kind of, you know, Neptunian music, you know, Neptune is a higher octave of Venus. So this is another, you know, aspect of Venus, which is music as well. But I mean, Hearts of Space is, you know, is all about otherworldly music, stuff that most people hadn't heard of. I mean, it was like a whole other multi-dimensional, you know, means of communication that opened up at that time. January 7th, President Reagan ends U.S. arms embargo against Guatemala, again, Mars. January 17th, Alabama Governor George Wallace becomes governor for a fourth time. He was the governor of Alabama, and he was a segregationist, and he gets a fourth term in 1983. And so what's happening now, we're seeing a whole revolution in our country with how, you know, Black people are treated, how they are defining themselves, how we're getting away from all those old bad models of society. You know, that's really a combination of Venus and Mars. But it's just hard to believe that in 1983, he got a fourth term, you know? So that was, it still blows my mind. So February 26th, Michael Jackson's Thriller album goes #1 and stays #1 for 37 weeks. Thriller, I mean, how Ketu and Scorpio can you get, right? That was like the quintessential Scorpio song, you know? April 8th, in front of a live audience of 20 tourists, David Copperfield makes the Statue of Liberty disappear. Very, very Ketu and Scorpio, you know? And what is the Statue of Liberty? A woman, Venus, you know? April 20th, President Reagan signs a $165 billion bailout for Social Security. So this is going to be a major theme for the next 18 and a half months, is bailouts. Not just Social Security, but, you know, more small business loans, more stimulus checks. You know, they're already trying to finalize one right now. It was supposed to come, I think it's going to come out at the end of the month. But that's probably not going to be the last one. Whoever becomes president, they're going to have to do another one, you know, because people, it's like the wave of economic depression really hasn't even hit us yet, because we're still in the quarantine. It's going to be, you know, next year when really we get smacked in the head with poverty, because people have been out of work, they've exhausted their savings account, you know, it's going to be, you haven't seen anything yet. September 16th, Arnold Schwarzenegger becomes a U.S. citizen. So how strange that 18 and a half years later, he becomes governor of California, which is usually Democratic, and they get a Republican. I mean, that's just like, I mean, that's a California earthquake right there. September 29th, U.S. Congress authorizes President Reagan to keep 1,600 U.S. Marines in Lebanon. Here we are, Lebanon. So I think we're going to be sending them some help, maybe in the form, I don't know what it's going to be, in the form of troops, in the form of, you know, there's going to be some creative solutions because, you know, Trump has already said, oh my gosh, it's awful what happened to them and we want to help. October 19th, U.S. Senate establishes Martin Luther King Jr. federal holiday. So the Senate establishes it, and then on November 2nd, U.S. President Ronald Reagan signs the bill establishing Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, which again goes back to Taurus and race and family and tradition and change, you know, changing those things, because that's what Rahu is about, right? He's about change. So we're changing how we celebrate those traditions.
Yeah, it's very interesting whatever you shared here. You know, definitely like what you said about Thriller for sure is a very good point with regard to like new music kind of thing. Very fantastic kind of new musical work coming through. We could expect some very great hits coming during this time period. If you're an artist, you will be at your creative best 100%. You know, definitely there is a political kind of thing, the racial segregation as you point, that will also definitely come to the front, like that kind of visibility, for sure, I can say that. Definitely there is a peace aspect with Guatemala, as you mentioned, the Hearts of Space, as you said, new kind of new ways of entertainment, something, it's almost like you could think, the best analogy I can say is that right now YouTube is kind of taken for granted. So some new way of entertainment kind of thing could actually come forth during this time period. You know, that's something like that would be synonymous, like it's part of everyone's life. Now, the social security is a very important aspect because again, security is a Scorpio kind of thing. Social security is definitely going to go through reforms. I do think there can be some changes there. In my opinion, there can be a big shift there because of social 100%. I do think the security is linked with Mars of Scorpio. So definitely there is a security aspect there. Social security is the joint assets of the other people's assets and so forth. There's a big transformation there. I think you can expect some kind of news with respect to social security, with regard to transformation and so forth, definitely in this upcoming round Taurus time period. Now, the Arnold Schwarzenegger point was a very interesting point. Could be that some people who are actually destined to be going to different countries would actually be coming forth right now. That's the way I would frame that. You're going to establish, like how Arnold Schwarzenegger was an Austrian citizen, if I'm not mistaken, and he ends up going to US, and then, you know, and then 18 years later, after he becomes the US citizen, then immediately, you know, he literally rises to the top. So like, the way I would frame that is that literally you might be making history in a foreign land. That's the way I would frame that, because Rahu is in Taurus, which is history kind of thing, the family history and so forth, and Rahu is signifying the foreign land. Now that's a very interesting kind of thing because, like you said, no matter what, how antagonistic the country might appear, you know, with your own core philosophy or something like that, you might still be able to make it to the top. So sort of like Rahu can actually take you to a different kind of country and so forth also during this time frame. So that can definitely play out. I do think the Martin Luther King is also a very interesting thing. Because I do think right now there is a lot of conversation around Black Lives Matter, all that kind of stuff, right? So usually perhaps some kind of culmination of that kind of thing could play out also during this time frame. Definitely Mars is also in general connected with the people who are darker in their skin color and so forth. You know, you could say that more brown, more dark, black, so forth. These groups of people might experience some kind of transformation. Yeah, so that's the other, and Scorpio is also a dark sign. You know, that's a different thing. So definitely, this is a very important thing to recognize. Themes connect with Africa, Africans, and so forth. You know, there was a volcanic eruption that happened in Africa, which was the news which was in the previous slide. So definitely you could expect some transformation with regard to their status, some national recognition, some new national history being formed around those teams as well. So that could be a very interesting kind of thing to play out, you know. Now the David Copperfield is very interesting. Perhaps we might be actually seeing something very fascinating, some very memorable kind of performances, just like how Thriller was a memorable musical album that's still being listened to by many people, you know. So that's interesting for sure. So yeah, those are really great points, Katya. But yeah, that's
And
what I wanted to share.
I would like to add a personal point, and that is on December 25th, Christmas Day, my grandmother passed away. And so for me, this was like the end of the golden era, you know, because she was the quintessential grandma, always looking out for me, always making sure I had what I needed. You know, she was a very strong woman who came from the mountains of Appalachia in West Virginia and led her family into Indiana and built us up. And boy, she waited. She had a brain tumor and she had a couple strokes before that. But Christmas Day of 1983, she waited until all the family got to her house for Christmas and we were all gathered around her bed, and then she let go. You know, she planned the whole thing. So for me, this was like the end of the golden era, you know. So I miss her very much. Okay, so these are the eclipses that are going to happen during the next 18 and a half months. So we have November 29th to the 30th of this year. We have another lunar eclipse, which is penumbral, and it's going to take place much of Europe, much of Asia, Australia, North America, South America, Pacific, Atlantic, and Arctic. That's where it will be visible. December 14th, we have another solar eclipse, which is total. And it is mostly seen south in Africa, much of South America, Pacific, Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and Antarctica. Next year, 2021, we have May 26th, a lunar eclipse, which is total, and it'll be visible South and East Asia, Australia, much of North America, South America, Pacific, Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and Antarctica. June 10th, 2021, we have a solar eclipse, which is annular, and it's seen in much of Europe, much of Asia, north and west of Africa, much of North America, Atlantic, and the Arctic. November 18th through the 19th of 2021, we have a lunar eclipse, which is partial. It's visible in much of Europe, much of Asia, Australia, North and West Africa, North America, South America, the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and the Arctic. So that one's going to be really, seems like it's going to be very visible. December 4th of 2021, we have a solar eclipse, which is total. This will be seen in much of the south part in Australia, south in Africa, south in South America, the Pacific, the Atlantic, Indian Ocean, and Antarctica. And then in 2022, during this cycle of Rahu and Ketu, we have the last solar eclipse, which is April 30th. It's partial. It's seen in much of south and west of South America, Pacific, the Atlantic, and Antarctica. So I just want to take a look at the solar eclipses because they're the most potent. And really the lunar eclipses are either a foreshadowing or kind of a summation of the solar eclipse. They kind of encapsulate those events, you know. So I just want to take a look at the solar eclipses. So this one, December 14th, so this is coming up, you guys. This is a total solar eclipse, and this is where it will be seen. So I just wanted to pick a few countries to look at. Obviously, I can't look at all of them, but just the ones that stuck out to me right away. And of course, I want to look at the United States because this is where I live. And it just seems like whatever goes on here affects everyone else, even if it isn't totally visible here, you know. But it is visible. So for here, looking from Washington, D.C., this will be taking place in the 10th house of career and the government. And you can see we have Venus, Ketu, Mercury, Sun, and Moon all together in Scorpio on December 14th. So Santhip, what do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely transformation on the diplomatic front. A lot of trade relationships having challenges and so forth. Governmental changes, definitely the new government that will probably come in, is going to bring sweeping changes also no matter what. So that's a different thing for sure. Definitely, there can be some security changes also at the same time. That's also the other thing I would say on the 10,000. So that's very visible and so forth. I do think the security structures like the FBI, all that, right? They might also go through changes. The law enforcement kind of thing might go through a lot of changes. Perhaps the army could be involved, all that variation, in my opinion. All that security kind of thing that's becoming very, very visible by the new government. That's what I would say.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the big anthem of, the Democrats, or at least Black Lives Matter, is defund the police. And then, of course, Trump wants to send in the federal officers. He can't send in the military because you can't send in the military against your own people. But if people are attacking federal buildings, then he has the right to send in federal officers. So I see that all represented down here. And then, of course, Rahu's in the 4th house of the homeland, in Taurus. So there's going to be all those racial issues in the homeland at that time. And when George Floyd was murdered, that was when we had the first lunar eclipse of the year, which was June 5th, happened in Jastia. So, you can see Ketu's in Jastia at that time. So there's going to be, that was a foreshadowing of this, I feel like, June 5th. And then in Chile, this takes place in their 11th house. You see it goes right across here. So to me, these were the two countries the most, Chile and Argentina. Even though it's going to affect Africa too, but it just goes right over here. So this is massive for them. And for Chile, I use Santiago, the capital, and it's in their 11th house of communities and great gains. And then Rahu's in their 5th house of children and education, speculation, creativity. So it seems like they're going to have an overhaul in their society at that time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, definitely they do. Well, Chile as a country will be going through transformation. I do think there might be some transformation, some unexpected secrets, some unexpected scandals coming up, things like that. Some unexpected corruption kind of thing coming forth also. 11th house can also be network and, so it's almost like definitely it might have a security kind of thing going on. Could also be like a challenge kind of thing going on there also. I think the economy might go through a transformation. Usually Scorpio, interestingly, Scorpio also represents mining. Any kind of mining interest in Chile, those kind of, there might be some events there, all that, there might be some secrets coming out of Chile. Let me just put it that way. So I do think there can be some unexpected kind of challenges from Chile and so forth. Definitely 11th house also represents groups. So perhaps Chile's, the involvement of Chile in certain groups can be put into question. That kind of transformation could come forth, yeah.
Right. Well, and they've got the Saturn, Jupiter right on their ascendant at that time. And then Pluto in the 12th house, this is like really, dark.
Yeah.
The power of the small. It can even indicate mafia. And it's the 12th house, which is like the enemy from behind that you can't see. There's definitely going to be some massive change coming to this country at that time. And then for the United States, the Saturn Jupiter on that at this time is in our 12th house.
Right.
And then with Neptune on the ascendant, there's some delusional thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And the change is coming from behind and we can't stop it.
Right.
Now for Argentina, this takes place in their 9th house. which puts Rahu in their third house. So to me, this is about education, could even indicate like the Catholic Church, because, you know, that's pretty much everyone in Argentina is Catholic. And, you know, Rahu in the third, you know, this is media communications. And then Saturn, Jupiter is over here in their 11th house. So their society is getting transformed as well. And then Mars on the ascendant, there's probably going to be a lot of anger.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I could say, ninth house is that definitely some more scandals coming around the Catholic Church. You know, I don't think it's over for Argentina yet. You know, perhaps something around that front. Usually there can be transformation on the church front also. Ninth house education is the education sector in Argentina will go through a massive kind of transformation. Now, again, there might be a problem with neighbors with Rahu being in third house also. So that's the way I would frame that. You know, so there might be some karma with communication industry, the news media industry in Argentina could have some kind of transformation kind of thing. But yeah, ninth house, predominance of planets in ninth house, and you know, you could say that with Venus being there, this foreign diplomacy kind of thing could also be a very strong karmic thing. Some secrets coming out of Argentina. That's the way I would frame that. You know.
Yeah, and look at this, Neptune, the planet of secrets and deceit and delusion, is in the 12th house.
Yeah.
You know,
So
right behind them. So they're going to be really mad about secrets that were hidden, probably considering the church and maybe even. And isn't the Pope from Argentina, the current Pope?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think
Yeah, probably.
and he's
It
an
makes sense.
outsider, you know. So there could be something related to that coming up at this time.
Yeah, definitely. Could be that change with the Pope. Could be that change. Something around him coming forth. Could be some events around him also. A lot of Argentinians look up to him, you know, and now there could be a change that could now something around him that could be also happening. That's very true. There's a possibility there, definitely. Yeah.
So that's December 14th of this year. Now, the next one is June 10th of 2021. We have a solar eclipse, which this time it's Rahu, the Rahu and Taurus side, and it's in Rohini. Let's see. So let's take a look at where it's going. So what I got from this was Canada and Russia. Even though Greenland's going to be affected, Greenland doesn't have a large population, you know, so I didn't really look at their chart, but it is going to affect them. But in the United States, from Washington, D.C., the ascendant will be Ardra, and Venus is right on the ascendant. So there's going to be a lot of teardrops with women, but this is all taking place in the 12th house. And what is that? Foreign lands. So, you know, with Rahu and Rohini, yeah, what do you think about that?
Well, the first thing is that I can say with Ardra and so far, Ardra is also connected with poison, you know, the poison, chemical poison. I would say definitely the food, poison around food, that kind of thing can come forward very strongly. You know, like the food industry will be going through a lot of overhaul. Now, the Greenland thing is very interesting because there's a lot of debate around Greenland and so forth. I do think the ice caps and melting of ice caps could become a real concern, and during that time period, and that can be a big conversation. There are a lot of there's something that can play out around that time period. That can be a real important thing to consider. The polar bears and so forth, right? That kind of thing can be a real thing. What I also think is that with what I think is that perhaps there might be some challenges with Canada and Russia we could be facing on account of the ice caps melting and so forth also. That's also the way I would frame that. You know, perhaps,
yeah, you're right. You're right.
Perhaps now it's becoming a real problem for these countries which are, you know, at least close to them, or, you know, which are beginning to feel the effects of that and so forth.
Absolutely, yes.
With the US in the 12th house, definitely this is connected with foreign funding, foreign money and so forth. You know, that's definitely like companies from foreign land, government is trying to interfere in that. That's what I would say. Like, like right now, TikTok had to abandon its ownership of the Chinese ownership to like American countries, right? The TikTok, the social media app. So more of that. This could also be linked with foreign, lot more. I do think the eclipse on Taurus can also signify a big transformation with regard to banking industry. Like the economy kind of thing could really shift the whole banking kind of thing. Like we already saw social
retrograde, so that puts more
yeah.
emphasis upon the actual legal tender itself.
Exactly, yeah. Could be like a currency kind of change, like transformation with regard to currency. The whole economic kind of thing is having a real question mark, during that point. It's a real challenge during that time period financially, at least on the economic front. The good thing is that, it's a good thing and a bad thing. The challenging thing is that Mars is debilitated, but then the debilitation of Mars is cancelled on account of Saturn being opposite to it. So Saturn is Kendra to Mars. The Saturn is the sign lord where Mars is getting exalted. So that is actually cancelling the debilitation. So it's also an important aspect to consider because, you do have Moon and Mrigashira there, and Sun is also Mrigashira as well. So it's like the new Moon is happening in Mrigashira Nakshatra Lord, which is Mars. So again, there is a transformation. There can be some anger around it, unexpected events, shocking kind of events, and so forth, which will eventually be rectified. So the banking kind of industry having a real, like what you said earlier on, like the next year is going to be challenging economically, so the real effects of the pandemic can come forth during this time period. But yeah,
Yeah,
that won't be
and
easy
this
time period. Yeah.
Neptune and Jupiter conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
This is like massive delusional thinking. Yeah. And disposits to Saturn, and Saturn's retrograde with Pluto retrograde in the 8th house. And, this is oil.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole discussion of fracking, foreign oil as well. Because of our fracking in the United States, we haven't had we've been able to have our own oil and not have to rely so much upon foreign oil. So maybe at this time, there's going to be a real split, because it's trining each other.
What could also happen is that perhaps new oil field could also be discovered. That's also a potential thing. I do think Greenland kind of region could be subject to controversy because a huge oil field was discovered or something along those lines. I do think that could be a possibility there, definitely there.
Right.
But the oil industry is already going through a challenge, and it's really going to get more challenging for them, in my opinion. Yeah.
And also, what's being revealed, and we'll see in the next one, is as the polar ice caps start to melt, we are seeing ancient structures being revealed that were hidden below the ice.
Yeah, could be some
a whole view of history,
yeah.
And a lot of things are going to be shocking that we see.
I do think perhaps with Greenland itself, you might begin to see something like that already beginning. With this eclipse happening in Greenland, something new, historical new evidence coming about Greenland and so forth. That is a very likely thing. That could be possible. Perhaps with the ice caps and so forth. Yeah. Go ahead.
I want to point out, both Canada and the United States, it's in the same house. Ketu in Scorpio in the 6th. I think definitely by this time we're going to have a vaccination. I'm calling it.
Yeah.
And this might be the time that it comes out.
Yeah. Yeah, that is possible. Definitely. I do think so too. Yeah.
Now for Russia, this is taking place in their 9th house with Ketu in the 3rd. So I think, having Neptune in the 6th house, secrets revolving around their pandemic and their health crisis will come out. 9th house can also indicate foreign lands because it's long distance travel, and K2 in the 3rd, there's going to be communications surrounding the vaccine. So, they may be getting help somehow monetarily. I don't know. But with that Mercury retrograde there, in Taurus, the sign of money, they could be very involved in the vaccine somehow.
Yeah, yeah. Seems like with Mercury being there, with Mrgashira, the sign, the nakshatra of Soma, the moon god, also the snake. Snake is the animal there. Snake is having fangs, right? So the vaccine kind of thing is a snake thing going on. At least at the nakshatra level. Definitely, there could be huge opportunity with Russia with the vaccines. Definitely, that is a possibility. Perhaps this is a time period when Russia is actually making money out of it. That kind of thing could become very strong. A lot of foreign kind of thing, a lot of gains coming from that. Medical kind of theme is definitely true. I do think that is possible. There can be some, there can be conflict though at the same time. There can be some conflict around with the foreign relation kind of thing could also be a challenging phase. The whole foreign diplomacy, they are having to formulate a new way of foreign diplomacy. That's the way I would frame that, and a new policy with regard to the foreign relationships could actually come forward during this time frame. You will begin to see a whole new Russia as far as the diplomatic aspect is concerned. That's the other way I can frame that. Literally to a point where now, in my opinion, the European Union will go through a crisis, and then now Russia is becoming a major player. At this point, you will begin to see Russia really begin to play in a you'll begin to see it in a different light. So that's what I think is also going to happen. It'll be interesting to see, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting stuff coming. And then the last one, which is December 4th of 2021, solar eclipse, Ketu in Scorpio, Anuradha Nakshatra. So let's see where this is going to happen. So as you can see, that really takes place over Antarctica. And Parashara's light software did not have a position for Antarctica. But I think we're going to see something similar to the last one in that, we're going to see a lot of melting of the ice caps and structures being revealed. So mysteries, the occult, all of that Scorpio stuff is going to be prevalent. And in the United States chart, the ascendant is Virgo, and this takes place in our third house. And we've got Mercury there as well. And all of these are in Jyeshtha, but Ketu is in Anuradha in the third house. And having Mercury in, his house, which is, the Gemini house really of the third house, indicates money again. And the news and media communications, Rahu in the ninth, again, higher education. It's in Kritika at this time, which disposits to Mars. And Mars is over here in the second house of money in Vishaka. So what do you think about that?
Well, the first thing I can say is that definitely a lot of secrets will be revealed. Some kind of email, again, email controversy around, secret email, secret communication, that kind of thing. A lot more secretive knowledge sources coming out. That's something I could say. This will be a time period when loyalties will be brought to question. That's the way I would frame that, because Ketu is in Anuradha already. Now, United States, the communication with regard to foreign countries and so forth, which has been secretive, their secretive operations in foreign land, all that will come forth during this time period also. Mars being in second house, there can be some financial kind of thing also impacting, as you said, because of that. Like a lot more, Wall Street CEOs or something like that, right? Their communications are coming forth, which are becoming very public. A lot more shocking kind of fact. The shock factor can be very strong here with this particular eclipse, at least with regard to the publicity and so forth. I do think some artists could also be experiencing troubles, in my opinion, because let's just put it this way, because Mars is actually aspecting Saturn. Saturn is also aspecting Mars, and Mars is actually Libra also. The whole movie industry kind of thing could, there could be some challenge there. Now, Mars is also aspecting Rahu and Kritika. So that's also kind of giving an indirect kind of there's some new historical kind of evidence can come forth. And now the most important thing I think I want to highlight here, even before the USA kind of thing, was how the eclipse was actually happening on the Antarctica. Could you play that video again? Katya, so you can see that the actual eclipse is going through from South Africa all the way to like Antarctica is where the actual place where that eclipse is happening. Now, wherever the land where the eclipse is visible, there can be a big transformation coming in that land. Now, for instance, when there was an eclipse that was visible in India and China, you could actually see there was a diplomatic war that ensued between India and China. So exactly you're going to see something like the keyword is some shocking new evidence, like what Katya was saying about some historical kind of thing coming forth, and could be like there could be some big secrets coming out of Antarctica. It could be
Well,
that the Antarctica.
a lot of, I hate to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but I mean, it's really not a conspiracy anymore. ET structures, craft that's been down there, it's been covered by ice for thousands of years, and now it's melting, and they can't hide that. Governments can't hide that anymore because there's so many satellites going around the Earth, and it's just really hard to hide that information now. And so I feel
the fact that
it
definitely could be ET. I do think it's definitely ET. I do think it'll be could be something some kind of unexpected kind of thing. I can definitely say that, but it's visible in Antarctica, so could be that the ice caps are melting. That's becoming a real cause of concern. Could be that some real secrets are coming. Could be that history that was kept hidden within the ice cap that is also coming forth. History is always having a secretive aspect to it. That's also one more thing. Now, this could also be Antarctica. This could also be South Africa and all those lands also. Some new historical kind of evidence coming forth around the South America and Africa and so forth also. That's also one definite thing. But yeah, I do think Antarctica is going to be a big there could be some real secrets coming out of Antarctica around this eclipse. I do think that can be a real cause for, that'll be big part of the media attention during that time period. No doubt about that.
Right. So we have in South Africa, this is taking place in their 11th house of communities, and Rahu's in their 5th. So I definitely think, something to do with their children and education is going to be happening at that time. And then Mars is in their 10th house of the government. So, there's going to be a lot of, I feel like there's going to be like a societal transformation. Maybe the government will make some new laws at that time, especially concerning children and education for them. Venus in the 12th, hey, money from foreign lands. they could get some help somehow. And then Saturn and Pluto right on their ascendant. I mean, that's oil. And it's right on their ascendant. So I know South Africa is known for their gold, which would be the sun over here. And then Neptune, Jupiter in the 2nd. I feel like, there's going to be a lot of leaders that are lying about something, because it's in Saturn's sign, and Saturn's here with Pluto, darkness, manipulation, dark agendas. That they're lying about at this time. What do you think about that?
Well, yes, for South Africa, the eclipse is actually beginning in South Africa. I do think there could be some shocking news coming up. That's true. Could be the mining industry is going to go through an overhaul. That's also a possible thing, definitely in South Africa. And I think there can be a big transformation coming either because of increased demand or having to face a situation and so forth. Definitely Mars is involved here. There could be some unexpected military kind of deal happening, unexpected crisis that they might have to face, all that kind of emergency kind of thing could also play out. Corruptions within the South African leadership or that particular country could be coming forth also. Now, this is a time period when new history could be written even for South Africa in an actual sense. because of Rahu getting an aspect from Mars and so forth also. Venus being, yeah, definitely the foreign, the corruption in South African kind of, perhaps law enforcement or army, military, or even weapons sector that could even come forth. Like weapons is also linked with Kritika, Some new weapon kind of thing could also come forth. Conspiracy around that could also play out. Definitely. There's also likelihood and so forth there, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. And then that Uranus retrograde in the fourth house of the homeland. So
yeah, Uranus in Barney is going to be very
sudden,
interesting.
going to be sudden,
Yeah.
whatever happens, an Aries sign.
Could be like a technology also. A technology is bringing forth new technologies coming forth, is changing the landscape and so forth. Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay. And then India. I had to include India.
Yeah.
So for you guys, the ascendant is Pisces, and this is taking place in your ninth house of, spiritual leaders and higher education and luck and fortune and the fathers, Rahu in the third, again, media communication. There's going to be, I feel like, technological breakthrough, maybe something transforming, some kind of technology that transforms higher education, makes it easier for people to access. And then, this disposits to Mars, and Mars is in the eighth. Mars in the eighth, that's really bad for health and disease and can be very dangerous time. So even though the pandemic should be over by this time, maybe the vaccine hasn't come to India yet or something. And so there's still going to be suffering. Yeah, and then Neptune, Jupiter in the 12th house. This is, secrets of spiritual leaders, I feel like. And it's dispositing to Saturn in the 11th house of communities. So there's like maybe some big secrets in the communities, things that aren't being exposed at that time. What do you think?
Well, what is interesting about India's chart is that India actually, the Indian independence chart actually has Rahu Ketu and Taurus and Scorpio. So India is actually going through a Rahu Ketu axis return right now. So for India, it's going to be huge. This particular eclipse, the Scorpio eclipse, can be huge for India. And I do think the Taurus eclipse, when the solar eclipse in Taurus that happens in July, that could also be a big thing with respect to India. What I think can happen, at least with respect to this eclipse, is that definitely a lot more research emphasis on universities could come forth, a lot more research projects could come forth and so forth, because it's happening in the sign of research, which is Scorpio, and it's happening in the 9th house of universities also. Definitely there can be other controversies around the temples and so forth that can also play out. And there's a huge Ram temple thing going on. You might see the temple coming forward during that time period, and a lot of events around that. Potential scandals around that is also possible, to be frank. But what is again interesting is that because it's happening 9th house of foreign relationships, there could be some real shift with the way the foreign money is coming forth also. That's also the other thing I can say. A lot of scrutiny coming forth, a lot of unexpected things coming up. A lot more the corruption within the law enforcement could also be coming forth. For instance, recently in Indian, there was a famous Indian actor, Sushant Singh, who got, whose death is like a controversial kind of thing, with the police literally missing they say that his file got deleted, and that's like immediately
Wow.
raising a lot of questions with regard to whether it's there's something hidden going on there and so forth. So those kind of things can really come forth to the front, like the corruption within law enforcement and so forth. I do think there can be some shock factor coming with India also, especially with Scorpio happening. And I do think there might be some unexpected events. Like one of the events which you shared was the express where pilgrims got murdered. There was a mob that attacked a train in India. So I do think there could be some challenges there on that front. Some unexpected shocking events, which is challenging there, which is challenging the religious sentiment and so forth. The kind of like your religious kind of thing is being called to question. Are you willing to defend your religion? That kind of thing is being called to question. That's a possibility there, and you can see some shock factor events there, in my opinion. But the fact that it's happening in the 1-7 axis, this could also, like, the India is actually having Taurus ascendant, and the eclipse is happening in the Scorpio sign, which is 7th house also. But this particular eclipse is giving the 9th house kind of element. So this foreign partnerships can really, new foreign partnerships can be coming into play, and the foreign partnerships could be called to question also. Like that kind of thing can become really, really important with regard to India. Like the foreign, like what I just said about with Russia with the previous eclipse slide, how Russia had to evaluate its foreign strategy and so forth. India could also be having a big foreign kind of thing going on. Like right now, foreigners can't come to India. The visa is kind of restricted and so forth because of the travel, because of the pandemic and so forth. At this point, I think things could be relaxed and there could be a transformation with regard to that. This is also foreign money. In my opinion, the secret assets around foreign kind of thing could play out. A lot of people will be evaluating their assets in foreign lands. That kind of thing could also be coming forth also during this time period. So it will be an interesting time period for India. It's definitely a time for transformation as far as India is concerned. Anytime nodal return happens, it's like a necessary transformation that needs to play out in your life. So that's something which India would also be going through right now. Now, what is interesting is India actually has Rahu in Kritika. So it will be kind of an intense kind of transformation, a lot more critical kind of thing going on and so forth. Yeah.
Right. And also Uranus retrograde in the second house of money.
Yeah. So new ways of money, new ways of cash payment kind of stuff going on, evolving of that.
Bitcoin,
that kind of thing.
it could be, cryptocurrency.
Yeah, cryptocurrency definitely becoming major player in Indian market, Indian financial kind of thing could be an actual thing. Most of the, I do think cryptocurrency technologies would be adopted during Rahu and Taurus. I do think cryptocurrency based technologies could be coming forth more. You'll see that becoming much more of a norm, as a position that is being held and so forth. What is interesting is that because Venus is in 10,000, there's a lot more artistic kind of very interesting art could also come during this time period. So very interesting movies could come forth. Now the whole movie industry is going through a big shift right now. Could be that new ways of revenue is being forced. Now what is interesting, in my opinion, is that when there could be a lot more transformation with regard to streaming services and so forth. A lot more streaming services coming up.
Third house,
Lot more.
Rahu in the third, streaming.
Yeah, streaming.
Yeah.
So there's already a lot of players coming already in the Indian market that's going to get huge. Now, I do think perhaps there might be a big shift with the actual bigger Bollywood studios trying to stream their movies right now, or a challenge with the film industry, which they are having to battle it out and so forth. So it can be an interesting kind of thing to see what will play out during this time period. Yeah. Because definitely the movie industry is going to have a very interesting time period where they are forced to adapt to the times. So that's the other aspect that is also happening. So it'll be interesting to see.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, Mars in the 8th can indicate disease, but it also, it's the house of, death. So having Mars there could be a lot of violence.
Yeah.
And
there's definitely potential for violence, hidden potential for violence around the eclipse time. I can say that some kind of violence erupting in unexpected fashion. There are some regions in India which are, there might be some controversies around mining and so forth. I do think there might be some engineering disasters. This could play out. Hopefully that doesn't hopefully that doesn't happen. So some kind of building kind of based disasters, engineering kind of defects, things like that coming up.
right.
Usually I would say with Ketu being in Anuradha is also connected with pipelines. Pipelines could also indicate some kind of oil pipeline kind of thing going on, explosion around oil pipelines, all that kind of thing. That's also the other aspect which I can say. Perhaps new pipelines being put in also into place and so forth.
Because all that oil and underground stuff is in the 11th house of communities. So
yeah.
And also great
definitely.
gains, making money from that as well.
Yeah, the oil and gas industry is definitely up for a big shift. With at least in Indian context, for sure, it's going to be a big shift. They're having to rethink their oil and gas strategy and so forth. So that kind of thing will definitely play out in a big way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have in my presentation. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, well, I want to again bring that point to, even though we are talking about the eclipse that will happen in Scorpio next year right now, I do think that Antarctica eclipse can be very significant. I do think that's, the eclipse happening over Antarctica this time could really be significant. I do think perhaps like what you said, and Rahu and Taurus usually brings about new history, so like the history is also going to go through a big shift, like a big shift in thinking could come forth from that. Great. Scorpio Ketu transit is excellent for research. You'll find a lot of powerful research coming in. You'll find a lot of new researchers coming into place, during this time period. A lot of people will be taking up for research. The whole occult field is going to go through a big transformation in many ways, So it's
And
good
how
for
we
astrologers.
learn and what we're learning. Like right now, they're already talking about changing the history books in this country to reflect this, the reality of African Americans in this country. It's not reflected in the history books. Also, Native Americans too. Like history is written by the conqueror.
Yeah.
And so now they're having a comeuppance.
Yeah, I do think so that time period will be facing a lot more of that. So a lot more of history books being changing. You'll see along with that will also come the economy going through a big shift also. Definitely the foreign kind of influence and so forth. Definitely along with that, again, eclipse around Taurus will change the food in a very strong way. As the other aspect, what are we eating? What are the values we are consuming? What are the values we are encouraging through our own habits and so forth. All this will be a very important point. What will be interesting also is that I do think Scorpio can bring about a lot more secrets. Now these secrets can play out in the macro scale, also the micro scale of our own lives also. So this will be a time period when perhaps the secrets about, the friend whom you're loaning money just came forth or whatever, the secret assets kind of thing could be coming forth. Secrets around inheritance could be coming forth, all that. That's also one more thing. Now, I do think it's a very important moment to consider the fact that you just mentioned that your grandmother died in around the beginning of the session. So usually this will be a time period when the elders can go through a transformation themselves. The elders are kind of facing the weight of the transformation themselves, forced to like deal with transformation kind of energy themselves also. Because Rahu and Ketu in general signifies the elders holding the genetic heritage, So I do think that kind of thing can also become very important. But yeah, like I said, this is not an easy eclipse in Scorpio. The eclipse in Taurus can be easier compared to the eclipse in Scorpio. This time it's kind of complicated by the fact that Mars is actually a major player, with being the lord of Ketu and so forth. So the Scorpio eclipses can be transformational, the shock factor can be higher and so forth. Perhaps the results of the US presidential election could be shocking. It could just increase the shock factor, That's also, I think we could say, like, just like how no one expected Trump to win. So I do think this could, whatever be the results,
He could win again and they're going to get shocked again.
Yeah, there's a possibility, very strong possibility right now. If the women are being called to action, that could be a possibility. But no matter what, I do think the Rahu in Taurus is going to bring forth a lot of powerful women. That's also going to come forth. A lot of powerful diplomats will be happening. A lot of great historians will be born. Like a lot of great athletes will be coming. Athletes who define a generation. That kind of great athletes will also be coming forth. So in that regard, we are going to live into exciting times, So like what we said, Mars and Venus kind of themes could be very powerful kind of energy that could really come forward during this time period, and then definitely the eclipses could be trigger points for many people to make those kind of transformation, to invite those energies into their life also at the same time. So yeah, it'll be very, very interesting to see what plays out. Definitely, I do think as far as the occult field of astrology is concerned, it's a great time period to be in the occult field. In many ways, very powerful secrets can come forth, very new ways of thinking can come forth. I do think even it'll be a great time period for astrologers when their own intuition can become very strong also during this time period. Very powerful occult knowledge could also come forth right now, definitely.
Yes, wonderful. Great. Oh, thank you
Great.
so much for joining me to do this today.
Yes.
I wanted to, just give everybody, a heads up and a warning about what's coming up. because I'm excited actually about this new cycle. I'm really sick of Rahu being in Gemini and this pandemic, and so I think a month from now when they switch, we're just gonna get a very needed change. So, so keep your heads up, you guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll go ahead and end. And thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, I'll see you then.